You said something 3 years ago. You don't believe it anymore. Maybe you cringe when you remember saying it out loud. But the real answer is deeper than embarrassment. Changing your mind feels like losing. So most people avoid it. They dig in, defending a position long after the evidence has turned against them. But here's the strange part. The people who are actually best at thinking change their minds constantly. The reason has almost nothing to do with personality and everything to do with how they treat their own beliefs. Psychologist Philip Tetlock spent over 20 years tracking expert predictions against what actually happened. His research found something uncomfortable. Most expert predictions were barely better than chance. But a small subset consistently outperformed everyone else. What set them apart wasn't intelligence. It was how they held their own opinions. Tetlock described the worst performers as hedgehogs, thinkers who knew one big idea and forced every piece of evidence to fit it. The best performers were foxes, thinkers who held many small models loosely and updated each one the moment new information arrived. A fox doesn't treat a belief like a flag planted in the ground. A fox treats a belief like a current best guess. This distinction sounds small. It isn't. Hedgehogs were often more confident and quotable. Foxes hedged and revised in public, looking less impressive in any single moment. But over years of tracked predictions, the foxes were simply more often correct. Think about what a belief actually is, mathematically. Every belief you hold is really a probability, even if it doesn't feel that way. The mathematician Thomas Bayes formalized exactly this idea in the 18th century. Bayesian thinking treats every belief as a percentage, not a fixed fact, and every new piece of evidence as a reason to update that percentage. Most people don't think this way naturally. Most treat beliefs like ownership. Once claimed, changing a position feels like losing property, not updating a probability. When a belief becomes tied to who you are, your brain starts defending it the way it would defend you physically. Evidence against it gets processed less like information and more like a threat. That's the real reason changing your mind feels so hard. It was never really about the facts. It's about what the fact would cost you to admit. Consider an ordinary group chat argument. The actual claim is rarely what's protected. What's protected is the sense of belonging to a group that holds it. This is why factual corrections so often backfire. You're not just offering information. You're asking someone to risk a small social exile for being more accurate. Smart people aren't immune to this. No one is. But the ones who think most clearly have built a small but crucial habit. They separate the belief from the self. The position is not the person. Being wrong about an idea is not the same as being a failure. There's a version of stubbornness that pretends to be confidence. You've invested time and reputation into a belief, and the longer you've held it, the more expensive it feels to let go, even when the evidence stacks up against you. Holding a belief past the point evidence supports it isn't loyalty. It's a cost paid for no return. So what does this look like in practice? People who change their minds well ask a specific question before defending a position. Not, how do I prove I'm right? But, what would change my mind? If you can't answer that, you're not holding a belief anymore. You're holding an identity wearing a belief's clothing. This applies far beyond political opinions. It applies to your career, relationships, habits, your sense of what you're capable of. The version of you from 5 years ago held beliefs about what was realistic for your life. Some were accurate. Many weren't. The discomfort of revising them doesn't make them true. It just makes them familiar. Notice how often, "That's just who I am" ends a conversation rather than continues one. "I'm not a numbers person. I'm just not disciplined." Each sounds like self-knowledge. Often it's a hedgehog's single big idea, defended because it's already been said before, not because evidence still supports it. Updating a belief is not a sign your thinking was broken. It's a sign your thinking works exactly the way it should, taking in new evidence and adjusting accordingly. The people who seem most consistently right over time aren't the ones who never change their minds. They're the ones who change them constantly, in small increments, before the cost of being wrong becomes large. Tonight, when you catch yourself defending a position a little too hard, a little too personally, it's worth pausing on the same question. Not whether you're right, but whether you'd even notice if you weren't. You said something 3 years ago that you don't believe anymore. That's not a flaw in your thinking. It's proof that it works.